Right.
I've heard the stories of Dutch coming to America and getting sick from our water. So it's not a one-way street anymore.
And that street does go two ways. You hosted quite a few groups coming from Russia to here, and you used to give them chocolate bars, right? And they used to love it.
Well, yeah, because I always challenged them because they're so proud. The Russians are so proud of their chocolate, and rightfully so. Frankly, give me a Hershey bar any day of the week. But I used to host training and research exchange during President Clinton's term with the Department of Commerce. And I had three such groups where a group would come over. There'd be about 28 or 30 people from Russia and the newly independent states. It turns out that a lot of senior people come. And we have doctors and everything that really had nothing to do with oil spills. But we would come here with interpreters. We would conduct training in New York, and then down to Florida, and then over to Texas A&M. And then they would go home. It would be a nice 2-week program financed by the United States. Mm-hmm. For me, it was so much fun to have a group of Russians come over here for the first time and see the excitement in the space. And Americans welcomed them wherever we went. Mm-hmm. I took a group to Anheuser-Busch Park in Tampa. And to watch them experience roller coasters and free beer at rides was just so interesting. And they wouldn't get off the roller coaster. They didn't understand. You got to get off. Oh, I'm not getting off. This is unbelievable. And if you remember the one ride where it's a plume and you're sitting in like a big wooden ride, and it comes down into water, and if you're walking over the bridge, you get wet. Well, there was a group of about 6 or 7 of them for a long time. Every time it came down, the people got wet, they would run up to them and put their finger in their face and laugh. And it was a friendly thing. It was a very friendly thing. And all of a sudden, you'd look over, and there'd be, 100 people playing with the Russians. I took them to the Lone Cabbage Fish Camp once, in Cocoa. A wonderful place to go out and see alligators, and their translation for alligator is dinosaur.
They're not wrong.
So, and on Sunday, the Lone Cabbage Fish Camp becomes an outdoor concert, and there's a lot of bikers, and I know the owner, Norman, and I brought him there in the morning. He says, "I thought you were kidding." I said, "No, I have 28 Russian and newly independent state people, and it's their day off, and I want them to find alligators." Well, he made phone calls, and all these bikers started to show up. I'm thinking to myself, oh boy. But hour and a half later, I look over, and there's Russians and bikers having races with fog legs and partying, and about just before we were going to leave, there was a rocket launch. And to see them out there watching that rocket launch was just an amazing thing.
Yeah, so you could kind of tell how different...
Americans treat them well.
Yeah. I was going to say, you could kind of tell how different their life is when they come here and they see sort of everyday things to us, like an airboat ride, or to see a dinosaur, or to go and to go on a roller coaster. I mean, I do that every weekend, and I don't think that some people... I don't think in my mind... some people don't do anything like this for their whole life.
Yeah,
and that was evident in their reaction.
Yeah, even in small places. I took them to a Denny's, and I was traveling with a guy who was very, very large. What you would see is your atypical Russian, and I did a lot of business with him. He's about 6'8", huge hands, and he had a small Leda car. When he pulled in, the car was tilted to one side. He was a jolly guy, smart. Their cars are tiny. And we went to a Denny's, waiting to get into, Anheuser-Busch there, and he made a joke to me that he thought all Americans ate steak and eggs for breakfast.
I would love to do that.
So
That's a
15 minutes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
What?
No. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. 10, 15 minutes.
Well, about 10 minutes later, here comes the steak. They gave him a steak with his eggs.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. I saw that every place we went. They loved Americans. But there were times, it was Ramadan, so we were in Galveston. And I got a call from the hotel managers that they were lighting fires in the hallway.
Oh, jeez.
These are educated people. They weren't lighting. They weren't eating during the day, so they were cooking with rice cookers and things in the hallway together. It was part of their religion to eat after dark.
Right.
And we bought them. Each of them had a yellow snow parker. You know the snow parkers. They have pockets everywhere.
Yeah.
And we were going out to Beaumont, and so I had to take them to Gilley's for the music, and then you know what's near Gilley's, the famous. We never really made it there. We went to Gilley's, and I took them to a local place to buy cowboy tchotchkes and things. They cleaned the place out. I mean, they bought every tie, every hat, boots. They were taking all this stuff home. The guy was I was famous for the store. It's near Mobile, Beaumont. Well, when we got to the airport, and we're leaving the next day on the way to New York and the trip, here you have 28 people all wearing these parkas, these down parkas. And in each one of their pockets are all of these little trinkets. So when they get to the custom, to go through take all the metal out of their pockets, well, they're getting things mixed up. So security's coming down. He's saying, no, that's mine. He won't leave because he took this. And it was comical. But when the airport finally realized what was going on, they made a special room. They took them all in there, and they treated them really well. So it was an interesting to see.
Yeah, Russians have a particularly high affinity towards our culture. I remember I heard a story about we had Prohibition back in the day, and it sort of resembled that. There was groups of Russians in sort of like an underground black market that were selling blue jeans, and it was like a black market to buy blue jeans because it was really, in Soviet times you couldn't wear things like that because it was a sign of America. And I forget where exactly I heard this story, but there was an underground black market of people selling blue jeans.
Oh, there was a lot of that. I used to take kids to Disney clothes, and they was like gold. To walk in with Mickey Mouse shirts and things. In the rest of the world, I would carry silver dollars. I'd always leave with silver dollars, and it got me in trouble more times than not. But in Russia, kids' Disney clothes really went over.
That's interesting because that was way before when you were doing that. There was only Disney World in Orlando and Disneyland. There wasn't a Disneyland Paris and Singapore, and I think they're putting one in Moscow by 2025. I just heard they're going to make a movie, a Russian-based Disney movie, and they're going to put but that wasn't. There was nothing like that. So that's interesting that they even knew what Disney was and Mickey.
Oh, of course, yeah. This Disney World is an icon throughout the world. Mike, you got any questions?
I mean, I don't really have any right now, but I know I do have some people that have some questions who've been texting me. A few listeners. We can get into that now, or if you have any more cool stories for us, then we can get into that towards the end.
Yeah, what did we miss? We did Singapore, Nigeria, Russia, Australia, China. I know you've been far more places than just that short list, but...
Well, we haven't talked about Indonesia, which, Bali is just one of the most beautiful places on earth. They have terrorism problems there, but they didn't when I was I was going, and I was the young guy at Mobile, so I got sent to places that no one wanted to go to. I always thought it'd be interesting. I went to Punkel and Susu and Punkel and Brandon, just in the middle of nowhere. When I landed at the airport, I got in one of those little cars, and for a 4 or 5 hour trip. And I remember seeing the car going around these gray rocks in the road. The guy didn't speak a word of English, so I tried to tell him what the gray rocks were. He got out of the car and showed me what an elephant looked like when it was going to the bathroom.
Oh,
they were elephant droppings in the road.
Whoa!
And if the car hit it, the car's so small, it would just go right off the side of the road into the jungle. And when I got to Punkel on Susu, it was fascinating. But the day I got there was an expat from England who was working for a local oil company, and either his mother or his grandmother had came over, and she was attacked by a lion at their pool and killed.
Yeah, it's not fun.
So I knew I wasn't in Oz anymore, that's for sure.
Didn't
So I was doing my first preparedness audit on a vessel, and the vessel traveled from Indonesia to Singapore every day. And I noticed when I got up there, some of the deckhands were sliding across the deck like it was ice. Well, it wasn't ice; it was oil.
Wow.
And when I looked over the side of the vessel, there was about a dime hole as if some little boy was urinating off the side of the vessel, all the way to Singapore, over the other side of the vessel.
Yeah, you can't get away with
And
that.
yeah, some interesting places for food there. The rep I was working with took me down to the waterfront, and it was tidal, very, very tidal. And I noticed there was a fish, or there is a fish, that came out of the water with these big fins and moved themselves up the tidal flat to eat worms.
Oh.
I'd never seen a fish walking before. So they brought a big,
That's cool.
like what I would refer to the Chinese poo-poo platter, and it had all different sauces, and in the center of this string-like meats that were incredibly delicious. So I'm putting them away and eating them and having a grand old time, and my guide brought his umbrella. I said, "What did you need the umbrella for?" And he points to the trees. There was monkey in the trees. So when he goes to that restaurant, he's better bring his umbrella to beat away the monkeys.
Oh.
So we're about halfway through lunch, and the tide's going out, and several old men are out there with a stick and a little sand flea on a string, and they're putting it down into the ground. And then they're catching something, and they're just turning it, and whatever bites onto the flea doesn't let go. So I said, "What are those things? What do you do those for?" And he points down to the meal that I've been eating off to they're sandworms.
Oh.
They were delicious, right? The sauce was good.
You gotta try
So
new stuff.
Indonesia is a wonderful place. Sumatra is remote. Very remote.
How so? Like, give me an example or
Well-
an anecdote.
Well, it's jungle.
Oh.
It's jungle. There are lions and elephants and wild elephants. And I was going through, when I went down to the dock to get onto the vessel, my guide wanted me to see something, and it seemed like every inch, and you could see down in the water 15 feet, like every inch there was these huge jellyfish with these tentacles hanging down. I mean, you dove in there, you wouldn't live for a minute.
Oof.
So it's just absolutely beautiful. Then leaving, we're going out a long canal, and it's very wild, and there was a wild baboon that scared the daylights from, a huge teeth, growling and making noises, following the vessel.
Oof.
So it's wild. I mean, it's not like going to the resort. When you're in Sumatra, you're out there.
Didn't somebody trick you into coming pretty close to an elephant?
Yeah, that was in Indonesia. He was making